Repeating history prevents history repeating. This is the story of the only recorded deaths of U.S. civilians on mainland U.S. soil during the course of World War II, as well as the advent of the first intercontinental weapons in world history. On November 4, 1944, as the war on the Pacific Front continued to rage on, the U.S. Navy recorded sightings of a large balloon floating far offshore of the California coast. Just over a month later, local police in Thermopolis, Wyoming were contacted about an unknown fiery explosion in the area. Several similar reports were recorded throughout the northwestern United States over the next few months. The U.S. military began to realize that there was something more going on with these explosions and began to suspect a possible, hostile military aspect and threat to these reportings. At the time, the U.S. did not yet understand that Japan had developed the first, successful intercontinental weapons in world history. Japanese scientists had been studying what we now know as the jet stream air currents high up in the atmosphere. They came to the conclusion that these currents would enable them to be able to send bombs, carried by large balloons, all the way to mainland America. The balloon bombs were manufactured largely by young conscripted Japanese schoolgirls, whom were taught to assemble the balloons using many layers of paper-like materials. The balloons were then rigged with multiple bags filled with sand and a fuse and trigger mechanism that could detect a drop in altitude. The trigger mechanism would then loose a bag of sand, removing some of the weight pulling the balloon down, allowing it to rise up again and rejoin the jet stream currents. This mechanism would allow the balloon to maintain the proper position to float itself across the Pacific Ocean and eventually into the U.S. If rigged correctly, by the time the balloon reached the west coast of America, all of the sandbags would have been dropped, until only the bomb remained, at which point the balloon would descend towards the ground and eventually explode upon impact. On May 5, 1945, a woman named Elsie Mitchell of Bly, Oregon, set out for a day picnic near Gerhardt Mountain. Her husband, Reverend Archie Mitchell, along with a group of Sunday school children, were also attending the picnic. Shortly after arriving at the site, Elsie and 5 of the children stumbled upon a strange, collapsed balloon object in the woods. The balloon bomb detonated, killing all 5 children as well as Elsie. On May 22, after the tragedy near Gerhardt Mountain, U.S. officials released a statement confirming that the explosion was a result of a Japanese balloon bomb and warning the public of the presence and possible danger of these devices. The incident was little spoken of for many years following, and therefore much of America remained unaware of these tragic deaths. In later years, news of these events slowly spread. In the 1980s, a University of Michigan professor, Yuzuru John Takeshita, became aware that the wife of a close friend had worked to build the giant paper balloon bombs during World War II. He coordinated for a correspondence between the women who had formerly worked in assembling these bombs and the residents of the city of Bly, whom had suffered the loss. The women folded 1,000 paper cranes as a tribute of regret for the lives lost in these events. All those involved expressed their sadness for the tragic occurrence. Not long after the events in Bly, the Japanese abandoned the idea of the balloon bomb, deeming them a military failure. They were the first intercontinental weapons the world had ever seen.